They resumed their trek at 4 in the morning, trying to make some headway before the baking midday sun. Even then it was hard work. Several thousand men, women and children dispersed in a long, exhausted trail. Their goal is to reach the United States, a country where they've now become a political football in a bitter election race.
What you should do, John, go into the middle of the caravan, take your cameras and search. Okay? Search. No. Take your camera, go into the middle and search. You're going to find MS-13, you're going to find Middle Eastern, you're going to find everything. And guess what? We're not allowing them in our country. We want safety.
In almost a week with the Caravan, Al Jazeera didn't find anyone from the Middle East, nor terrorists or ISIS, all of which President Trump has hinted at without proof. What we have seen are single men, women, and many families, like that of 1.5-year-old Giselle, taking a breather by the side of the road with her father and aunt. They, like others here, are aware of Donald Trump's accusations.
It's a lie. That's your first reaction. You feel bad about the discrimination because we are not gang members.
But what many in the Caravan aren't aware of is that the timing of their march could actually turn into a huge political gift for the US president. The Caravan has inadvertently come at just the right moment for President Trump and the Republican Party, and that's because the US midterm elections are just 2 weeks away, and the images of thousands of people heading for the US border, coupled with President Trump's inflammatory and unproven remarks, are only going to mobilize his support. No one we talked to denied that some criminals could be mixed in with the multitude. It's almost inevitable given the numbers here. But they also said that they were heading to the US to escape the violence and poverty of back home and to find work.
We only ask to be let through so that we can offer a better future for our children, our parents who are already old, and our families.
Ultimately, the backlash in the US to this movement of thousands of desperate people could push that dream even further out of reach, both for them and those who come after. John Holman, Al Jazeera, Chapels.
So, the hysteria about the migrant caravan coming towards the U.S. border from South and Central American countries, through Central American countries, has sort of jogged my memory on the two seminal pieces of white nationalist literature of the post-Mein Kampf era. So Mein Kampf is like the Bible of white nationalism. But after Mein Kampf, if you want modern pieces of religious, texts for the white nationalist, white supremacist movements of the world, you will find the Turner Diaries, which is a book that is notorious for depicting a revolution of pure white Aryans, stoking a race war where they exterminate internal enemies before taking over the world and creating a world that is cleansed of quote-unquote lesser races. There's a notorious detail in the book. The day is called the Day of the Rope, meant to evoke lynchings in the American South, except this time they're getting internal enemies. So there's two books. There's one book, about internal enemies. That's the Turner Diary. And a little less known is the book about external enemies. There is a book by French author Jean Respal called The Camp of the Saints. And it is a book that fetishizes Western xenophobia. It is a book about the global South. It was written in the 1970s in France. It is a book about the desperate people of the exploited global South coming to the West and conquering the civilized peoples of the Western world via their how do I put this? The book the author claims the book is inspired by the Book of Revelation, a passage in the Book of Revelation, and it certainly is apocalyptic. When you read Camp of the Saints, it's like reading a World War Z type zombie novel, except the hordes of zombies shambling into these Western countries are people from the third world. And they are, through sheer force of want, use numbers and an exploitation of charity to overcome the West, until in the end of the book, the only remaining country, the last free country, is fucking Sweden. And the author, the narrator of the book, talks about how, the unwashed savages are coming for the people of Sweden. They're about to cross. It very much so plays like modern zombie apocalypse fiction. And the problem with, where do I even start with the problems with that? When you take migrants and depict them as hordes of zombie-esque unpersons who are coming with pathological, they're depicted as sort of locusts. You are justifying the response that I've been seeing the right wing on Twitter get really, really amped about during this hysteria around the migrant caravan, which seems like it's not going to actually reach the U.S. border until December. They are really excited at the idea that the U.S. government, as though they don't treat people at the border badly enough, to use the kind of physical force and firepower to repel the quote-unquote savage invaders from the global South. They're really excited to see Trump machine gun little Venezuelan, Honduran, Guatemalan children in the mold of cheerleading when Israel murders women and children at their so-called border of their fucking open air prison. What books like the Turner Diaries or Caravan of the Saints do is take events, take neutral, complicated, subtle events, in this case around immigrants, migrants, and constructs for these egotists, because white nationalism is very, very closely related to ego, very closely related to narcissism. It's very much so about, I want to exist in a society where I see myself reflected in a literal sense. I want everybody to look like me. I want everybody to be culturally similar to me. I want everybody to talk like me. So to the egotistical Nazi mind, all they need to mobilize themselves and their allies is a narrative, a hero's journey that depicts their enemies as subhumans and lifts them up as moral exemplars, as people who are doing what needs to be done to defend themselves. And what's funny is that it's always defending themselves from people that they know they can easily beat. It's always these groups of migrants or other passive, vulnerable groups that they use narrative to amplify into an actual threat so that they can respond with disproportionate force. And this is true of the regime, the current regime, political party that runs the Israeli government when it comes to them dealing with the Palestinian crisis, dealing with Palestinian protesters at the border. So what they're cheerleading here is they want the big guns to come out, and as long as we don't challenge the narrative, you have to not because you're gonna persuade Nazis to do the right thing, but you have to counter the narrative to the mainstream population so that the mainstream population isn't, the less politically aware people understand what they're being fed, what the story means, and towards what end this narrative they're being, because what Nazis do is they then invite you to participate in their violent fantasies. So we need to, and usually they're going to use the raft to normies, the bridge to normies participating in their fantasies is to drape their fantasies in either concern trolling about the masses of marginalized people showing up. Oh, they're better off not coming here. Or usually more often they will use malignant language. They will, at least in this case, they seem to keep on harping on these are migrants. They're taking a book from the alt-right of Europe and America and talking about these are men of fighting age. They're flying a foreign flag. They're invaders. This is conquest. And if you saw the Al Jazeera clip I just played, you will see that these are mixed, predominantly women and children. These are vulnerable people. These are not, as imagined in the mind of white nationalists, a bunch of 19-year-old horny boys with big, hard dicks carrying AK-47s and a fucking ISIS flag wrapped around their head.